Tonight, we begin with a development that U.S. officials had feared, anticipated, and desperately tried to prevent: a missile barrage that unfolded not over days or weeks, but in a single devastating morning. Hours that left hospitals burning across Ukrainian cities. Hours that left residential neighborhoods reduced to rubble. Hours that forced the Biden administration to issue its most direct warning yet. What Vladimir Putin did today crossed a line that American officials had genuinely hoped would hold. And when that line broke, Volodymyr Zelensky did not hesitate. He responded with clarity, defiance, and unmistakable resolve. For several weeks now, there had been signals, not from official Kremlin channels, not from diplomatic sources, just signals that Putin was preparing something deliberately brutal. Putin has been aggressive throughout this war, yes, but he has been methodical in his aggression. His moves have followed a certain pattern, a rhythm, almost a predictability. But what set off alarm bells in Washington this week was that the pattern went completely silent. Intelligence analysts who monitor Russian military activity know the indicators. The surge in encrypted communications, the repositioning of strategic bomber assets, the unusual activity at missile storage facilities, the sudden radio silence from key installations, all of that went quiet. And whenever Putin goes quiet, it means something is about to get loud. Early this morning, U.S. Strategic Command detected what they described as multiple ballistic and cruise missile launches from at least 6 different locations, including hypersonic missiles that had not been deployed in such numbers in over 6 months. These are the kinds of weapons Russia only uses when signaling something very specific: intimidation, escalation, or collective punishment. Western observers didn't know which category this fell into or whether it fell into all 3 at once. But what they did know was that Putin was fundamentally changing his posture. And when an autocrat with nuclear weapons shifts military strategy without explanation, every intelligence agency on the planet pays attention. The targets became horrifyingly clear within minutes. Not military installations, not ammunition depots, apartment buildings, a children's cancer hospital in Kyiv, a maternity ward, shopping centers filled with mourning shoppers. This was deliberate mass murder of civilians. The statement issued by the White House tonight was not normal. It was not routine. It was not symbolic. It was urgent. Official after official described Putin's coordinated strike as barbaric, a documented war crime, and perhaps most importantly, a deliberate test of Western resolve. But intimidation only works if the target hesitates. Zelensky did not. In fact, Ukraine's response today was among the most forceful we've seen in nearly 3 years of war. Here's what we know. Within hours of the first missile impacts, Ukraine launched massive retaliatory strikes deep into Russian territory. These weren't symbolic drone attacks. These were coordinated precision strikes using Western-supplied ATACMS missiles and Storm Shadow cruise missiles weapons. Ukraine only deploys when sending an unmistakable message. Tonight, Pentagon officials confirmed that Ukraine launched devastating counterstrikes on at least 12 significant Russian military targets, including a major airbase that had been upgraded for strategic bombing operations against Ukrainian cities. Ukraine hit that airbase before Russian bombers could take off for another wave. They hit fuel storage facilities supplying frontline operations. They hit ammunition depots, stockpiling missiles for additional civilian strikes. They hit radar installations, coordinating, targeting data. In other words, Ukraine targeted the central nervous system of Russia's terror apparatus. This is what made the White House warning so urgent. Putin's escalation wasn't symbolic. It was preparation for sustained mass murder. And Ukraine, understanding that fully, responded with force. Not recklessly, not impulsively, but strategically. They didn't target Russian civilian areas. They didn't strike population centers. They hit legitimate military targets. They hit the systems designed to murder Ukrainian civilians. And here's where the story becomes even more significant. U.S. intelligence officials now believe Putin's attack was specifically designed to test Western cohesion after months of delayed aid packages and visible alliance tensions. Putin wanted to see whether the West would equivocate, but instead, the opposite happened. The Biden administration didn't hedge. They issued an explicit threat of direct action so unprecedented in its clarity that even the Kremlin took immediate notice. You don't get Putin's genuine attention easily. But today, America got his attention. Senior officials described Putin's calculus as a fundamental strategic miscalculation, a belief that Western fatigue would translate into Western passivity. But Ukraine proved today they remain both willing and capable of responding. Their counterstrikes were not only devastating, they were executed so precisely that Russian air defenses reportedly failed to intercept a single incoming missile. That precision matters because it shows what Western weapons can accomplish in Ukrainian hands. It shows Ukraine is not simply absorbing punishment. They are delivering punishment in return. What makes this moment so dangerous and so consequential is that Putin's attack happened when he is under extraordinary internal pressure. Russian hardliners want more aggressive action against the West. Russian pragmatists want an exit strategy. Russian oligarchs want sanctions relief. Russian commanders want adequate supplies and competent leadership. Putin is balancing these contradictory demands while fighting a war that has cost Russia an estimated 350,000 casualties. And when leaders in that position make sudden, dramatic moves, they're not doing it from strength. They're doing it from pressure. They're doing it from vulnerability. The White House statement, now circulating through every diplomatic channel, was designed to signal that America will not allow mass civilian slaughter to become normalized. Officials said plainly that Russia's targeting of children's hospitals was fundamentally inconsistent with any legitimate military objective. That is diplomatic language for this is a war crime and we are documenting everything. You don't hear that tone from official communications unless something serious is at stake. The administration announced expedited delivery of additional air defense systems and confirmed that internal discussions about expanded Ukrainian strike permissions are accelerating significantly. America is not backing down. America is stepping up. Meanwhile, President Zelensky addressed the world in a powerful, emotionally charged speech tonight from Kyiv. He said, "They attacked a children's hospital. They murdered children receiving cancer treatment. There is no military logic. There is only pure evil." He said, "Ukraine will not be intimidated by terrorism. We have survived everything Russia has thrown at us. We will prevail." And he said, "To our Western partners, now is the time for action, not deliberation. Every day of delay costs Ukrainian lives." These are not rhetorical flourishes. These are statements from a wartime leader who understands how high the stakes have become. Western analysts are now considering several possibilities. One is that Putin is preparing a major winter offensive. Another is that he's attempting to influence American domestic politics by demonstrating this war will continue indefinitely. A third possibility, the one worrying officials most, is that Putin is trying to normalize attacks on civilian infrastructure, so future atrocities generate less international response. But today, Ukraine took that card off the table. They didn't issue press releases. They didn't wait for permission. They didn't hope for the best. They struck back immediately and devastatingly. As the night continues, we expect more details to emerge about what Putin hoped to achieve. But what we know is that America's warning was timely. It reassured allies that the United States remains committed. It signaled to Russia that escalation carries costs. And it demonstrated Western unity is not as fragile as Putin believes. What happens next depends on what Putin does in the coming days. If he de-escalates, this moment will be remembered as another failed attempt to break Ukrainian spirit. If he escalates further, Ukraine and the West have shown they are prepared to respond. They have shown they are ready. And tonight, for the first time in months, Vladimir Putin appears to be genuinely recalculating. The Kremlin is quiet, too quiet. And when Putin is quiet, it means he is thinking carefully. Because tonight, he learned something he should have learned long ago. Ukraine will not break. The West will not abandon Ukraine. And barbarism will not go unanswered. This story is far from over. But tonight, one thing is clear. Ukraine remains defiant. America remains resolved. And Putin's strategy of terror has failed once again. And we will be here, watching every detail as the next phase unfolds.